So far, we've been exclusively using JavaScript to interact with the page that the user is on. But there is a huge amount more that we can do with JavaScript. And we're going to start getting into that now by looking at a basic programming concept of variables. So first off, I'm going to clear all this content to get us back to a nice, clean, empty page. And let's have a quick look at what I mean by a variable. So if you think back to your school days, you might remember solving equations with x or y in them. In that case, both x and y were variables. They were letters that represented certain values. And that's what they are in JavaScript as well, and indeed in programming in general. So we might, for example, create a variable, which we do using the keyword var, and our variable might be called x, and we might set it equal to 5 for whatever reason. Simple as that. So now we've got our variable, which is called x, and it's equal to 5. We can prove that to ourselves by alerting the value of x. So notice I don't have quotes around my x this time. If I do that, it will just alert the letter x, but without quotes, it will alert the value of the variable x, which is 5. I can change the value of x whatever I like, and that will change. I can also update the value of x later on. It's not fixed, so if it starts off as 10, I can then later on just change x to be 20, for example. I don't have the var this time because I'm not defining x, I'm just changing its value. So if x is now 20, there we go. That's the value. I can also have non-numerical variables. So I might have the variable name and set it equal to Rob. Now to tell the browser that this is a string, we put it in quotes, just like we have done with strings of letters all along. So let's have a look now and see what that gives us. Have a quick think. What should pop up? Of course, Rob. So variables are hugely powerful things, and we're going to use them throughout the rest of this course. But how might we use one to do something in a web page like the ones that we've been creating so far? Well, let's try this as an example, and I'll set it up as a mini challenge. Can you create a text input and then a button next to it which says change the text? That's it, a text input and a button next to it that says change the text. Go for it. All right, hope you got it. Pretty straightforward. We just use input, and then the default type is text, but I do like to specify anyway that we have a text input here. So there's our text input, and then next to it we're going to have a button with the value of change the text. And there we go. And of course it's still alerting Rob. Let's get rid of that for the moment. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a paragraph which just says this is some text. And then what we're going to set our little page up to do here is to allow the user to type whatever they want into the box, and then when we click that button, then whatever the user has typed in the box will replace this is some text down here, and we'll use a variable to do that. All right, so a little mini challenge for you. Can you make it so that when you click the change the text button, something happens? I don't care what it is. You can update some content, you can alert something, you can do whatever you like, but just make it so that when I click that button, something happens. Go for it. I wonder how creative you got there. I would start off by giving the button an ID. I'll call it text changer, like that. And then we need to get that button, and we do that in the now hopefully familiar way of document.getElementById. And then the ID is text changer. And then we want to set the onClick to a function, which we'll define with some curly brackets. So my challenge just said do something, so we'll just say alert hi Rob for now, just to make sure that everything's connected up nicely. And I would recommend doing that when you're working through making a site and making interactive things. Just do it really step by step. Don't try and code everything in one go, because inevitably it won't work and then it'll take you ages to figure out what's wrong. But if you do it step by step, hopefully you'll make fewer mistakes. And if you do make mistakes, it'll be a lot easier to see where those mistakes are. Right. So now what I'm going to do is get the value of our text input. And the value is going to be whatever the user has typed into it. So I'm going to set up a variable. I'll call it text entered, like that. And I'm using the same capitalization convention, so small letters all the way through, except for the beginning letters of the second and future words. And initially, I'm going to set it to an empty string like that. So this tells the browser that we want this to be a string, but initially it's empty, just like the box is initially empty. But then I'm going to take text entered and set it to the value of whatever the user has typed in the box. And to do that, I need to set an ID for my input. I'll just use text input. And now I want to get the value of text input. So I do that using document.getElementById. Text input is the ID. And then I want to get the value of that. Simple as that. So this will give us the value that the user has typed into that box. And just to check, let's alert its value. Just to take a look. So I'm just going to put ASDF in there. And there we go. So we've taken our variable, we've created it, and then we've set it equal to the value of the input, which is just whatever the user has typed. So final challenge then. Can you change the last line of our code so that instead of alerting text entered, it sets the value of this paragraph, or the inner HTML, I should say, of this paragraph to whatever the user has typed in? Go for it. All right, hope you managed it. I'm going to give our paragraph an ID, and I'll just call it text. And then once again, we're going to get that in the usual way. And we're going to set its inner HTML to be equal to text entered. There we go. Simple as that. So let's run this again. Type in some text, change the text, and there we go. So this is a very basic usage of variables to allow us to add another level of interactivity in our page. So we're not just clicking buttons and doing something, but we're actually allowing the user to type in something and then getting the results and doing something with them on our page. So variables open up a whole new world of power and interactivity that we can create with our websites, and we're going to take that further and further over the next few videos, specifically in the next one looking at arrays.